Welcome back to Dubuque, Iowa, where we'll be holding a town hall tonight with Democratic presidential candidate Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. Many Democrats interpreted Robert Mueller's remarks this week about President Trump as an impeachment referral to Congress. Joining us now from Georgia, Congressman Doug Collins, the top Republican on the House Judiciary Committee, where formal proceedings would begin. Congressman, both Attorney General Barr and former Special Counsel Robert Mueller spoke this week, and there were some contradictions. Here they are on whether President Obama committed obstruction of justice.
There is substantial evidence to show that the president was frustrated and angered by his sincere belief that the investigation was undermining his presidency, propelled by his political opponents, and fueled by illegal leaks.
If we had had confidence that the president clearly did not commit a crime, we would have said so.
You side with the Attorney General, and you say that the Mueller report shows that there was no obstruction, but when you listen to Robert Mueller there, that's not what he says.
Well, Chris, good morning. It's interesting for Robert Mueller that he starts from the premise that's so interestingly the wrong narrative for America is that he's trying to take and said we're proving innocence here and that you're guilty until we prove you innocent. It's really an interesting correlation here. I think what happened is that the report is now out. We see the report. You had stated earlier that this was the call for the Democrats to start impeachment. They've been wanting to impeach this president since November of 2016. They've never liked him. They use any excuse to begin the impeachment process. But what we found was no collusion. There was no charge of obstruction. Remember, Bob, Attorney General Barr and Rod Rosenstein, who was appointed under Obama, both came to the conclusion, taking under no pretense of any legal opinion, and said that there was no charges to be had when they made their final report after getting it from Bob Mueller. So I think what he said this week was, frankly, it was sort of frustrating for that. He wanted to just basically memorialize what he had already written down. And again, to cause more questions for many of us, that instead of finding answers, we still find more questions.
All right. Then there's the issue of whether or not Mueller felt bound by the Office of Legal Counsel, a part of the Department of Justice, by the OLC's ruling that a sitting president cannot be indicted for a crime. Here again are Barr and Mueller.
He reiterated several times in a group meeting that he was not saying that but for the OLC opinion he would have found obstruction.
Under long-standing department policy, a president cannot be charged with a federal crime while he is in office. That is unconstitutional.
Again, Barr says that the department guideline was not the issue, and Bob Mueller indicates that it was a central concern.
Well, Bob Mueller stated this was nothing new. This, again, has been out for now a while. It was actually written in the report. I mean, a lot of people are saying that this was some kind of a new revelation from Bob Mueller this week. No, it was actually written into the report. We talked about it then. But Bill Barr also made it very clear that when he...
It does contradict what Barr was saying, the Attorney General, when he said that Mueller said that that wasn't an issue, and Mueller says it was an issue. So he at least was setting the record straight with regard to what Attorney General Barr has been saying.
Well, and that's Mr. Mueller's, decision that he made to do his press conference this week, or his discussion about it. But also it's very clear that Bill Barr and Rod Rosenstein basically both said that they did not take that into account when they took the information from Bob Mueller, who, by the way, punted on a prosecutorial decision. He sent it back and said, we're not going to make a decision based on the evidence that they had found. When we look at this, again, the frustration point is the report has been out. Mr. Mueller decided he wanted to end his time and resign and go back into private life. He did so by going up and restating points that he picked from the report that he wanted to do on Wednesday. Look, I respect him. He needs to go back to public life. That's what he wants to do. That's fine. But when we look at this report, there's also many things that were left unanswered on where it started, how they got the information, why they only picked and choose a little bit of the dossier to actually disprove, but yet not talk about the other issues around this. Like when did they stop and find that no collusion actually existed? When did they continue on with this continuation of looking into the president? This is a continuation of a discussion that happened Wednesday that should have ended with the report. He now should be ended. And now, actually, I believe Bill Barr is right in saying, how did we get to this point to start with? This is the critical point, because we've had 2 years of basically turmoil caused caused by a cabal that started at the FBI that we're now actually getting a chance to look into.
All right, I promise I'm going to get to that in a moment, but you have just raised a lot of questions that Robert Mueller could answer. In the past, you have said that you would like him to testify before the committee. He made it clear this week he has no interest in doing so. Would you support a vote by Democrats on your committee, the House Judiciary Committee, to subpoena Robert Mueller so they can ask their questions and you can ask your questions?
Well, that would be an interesting question for Chairman Nadler, because Chairman Nadler this year has shown that he is willing to subpoena anything that moves. And it's amazingly, he's not talked about that with Robert Mueller. I don't believe he really wants to talk to Robert Mueller, because it's better for him to continue a narrative that Robert Mueller said things or implied things that he's trying to imply to the American people as impeachment. I was one of the first Republicans that said publicly, along with John Ratcliffe and others, that said we would like to talk to Robert Mueller because we do have questions. I believe it's a twofold process. I believe Chairman Nadler likes to continue the innuendo and doubt that has been placed. And then also at the same point, Robert Mueller doesn't want to testify before Congress because he's going to get real questions about how the investigation was done, where it started, how it became, and why they sort of picked and choose, it seems, in the report, how this actually got going. So I think it's a two-way street here. Let's see what Chairman Nadler does. He's been obsessed with subpoenas since he became chairman. Let's see what he does now.
Okay, let's get to the question you were raising. Attorney General Barr has indicated that he is now launched an investigation into the origins of the Russia probe. What is the single biggest question that you have that you would hope that this investigation would answer?
Mine is taking into account what we have already seen is a pattern that seemed to be developed by what I've called a corrupt cabal with Strzok, with Page, with Comey, with Baker, with McCabe, that seemed to be at the picture in the center of everything going on, from the mid-year investigation, the Clinton email investigation, that moved into the Russia investigation. The information that was given to the FISA court, the information of a dossier that was, if Mr. Comey later said was salacious and unverified, but yet he verified that it was accurate going before this court. These are the kind of things that you look at and should concern every American, not just a Republican, not just a Democrat or independent. This should consume every American, that you had a group at the Department of Justice and FBI, not the whole block, but a cabal that was saying, we don't like Donald Trump. We don't want to see him president. They even said in text message, we'll have an insurance policy. They were going at seemingly a roundabout way to say, we're going to take it into our own hands. This should concern everybody when you use a court such as the FISA court, which is a secret court, which is one in which they have seemingly not used all the evidence that they could have done in that. Congressman, excuse me, I got less than a minute left. I want to ask you one last question. And this goes to the origins of the investigation. James Comey says, look, they had information by July of 2016 that the Russians were hacking Democratic emails. And we know that George Papadopoulos, an advisor of some sort to the Trump campaign, was talking about that. Comey says they would have been derelict in their duty if they hadn't pursued that. Do you agree? Jim Comey right now is trying to rewrite history. I believe his 15 minutes are up. He knows it. He's going everywhere talking about the things that he did or should have done. And I think the interesting thing is here, he doesn't want, I believe, the light of investigation shined on what they were actually doing. I don't believe Strzok or Page or McCabe or Baker or any others wanted as well. So they're remaking themselves now. When they go back and look at this, when you look at the information they had, which was essentially disproven and many times even through his own words were salacious and unverified, how do you take that with a straight face to the court? Mr. Comey, your time's up. It's time for us to find out how this started and go from there. Congressman Collins, thank you. Thanks for joining us today. Please come back, sir. We will, Chris. Thank you.